Hello everybody, and welcome to Textile Medley. My name is Danelia Schoenfuss, and I am a white woman with short brown hair, blue glasses, a gray top, and some matching pom-pom earrings. I am also the program manager for Intertwine Arts, the organization that is hosting this talk today, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to inspire creativity, joy, and self-confidence through free-form weaving for people of all ages with disabilities or chronic illness. But today, we are here for Textile Medley, an artist talk series where Intertwine Arts highlights amazing artists with textile practices and influences alongside the amazing textile artists that we Intertwine Arts already have on staff. While Intertwine mainly focuses on weaving, we love to encourage and dip our toes into a range of fiber mediums, techniques, and tools that allows everyone to express their tactile creativity in ways that are accessible for disabled and chronically ill artists. Tonight, we are happily interweaving the arts practices of Jamie Boyle and Vandana Jain. We are going to start off with Vandana sharing her work for roughly 15 to 20 minutes. And then Jamie will share their work for 15 to 20 minutes. And then after that, Jamie, Vandana, and I will all discuss some of the commonalities and divergences in their work and experiences. So with that, I am going to ask Vandana to take it away, and I will spotlight you as well.
Thank you, Danelia. I'm Vandana Jain. I'm a brown woman. I'm wearing a red hoodie, and I also have glasses, and I'm sitting in front of the fireplace in my home. I'm going to share some images with you now. So I'm going to start by sharing this work of mine. This work I made, this is called the logo alphabet. And I started this work in 2003. And this is back when I was doing a lot of conceptual work and I was using a lot of different brands. And I was thinking a lot about our relationship as a society to consumerism. This work started when I came back from a trip to India, and I realized that in India, I would just see all these abstract symbols everywhere, and they were all spiritual signifiers. And then when I came back to New York, I just saw ads and logos, and I started thinking about that and like what that could mean. And that led to me following that intersection for about 15 years. This work was one of the works that kind of bridged that time span. I started it in 2003 and I ended it, I believe, in like 2015. I just want to do a quick visual description. We're looking at a slide with 26 panels of cloth that are hung on dowels at the top and the bottom, and each panel has an embroidery on it. So if we go from left to right, it's basically, I chose a brand for every letter of the English alphabet. And I was really interested I was thinking a lot about like embroidery samplers and how in America in the 1800s, they'd be used as sort of like a resume for like women to sort of show that they had, they were fastidious. They could do a task and do it well. They could keep a good home. They could read the Bible. Often there'd be like a biblical verse. So I was thinking about this idea of what a sampler was and what embroidery meant at that specific time. And then kind of thinking about what embroidery meant in our day and age, where it's still oftentimes being done by young women, this time in places that we maybe don't know, like far-flung export-free trade processing zones or wherever it is cheapest to hire that kind of labor, and just kind of trying to create a bridge between the two. But while I was working on this series, I'm just going to kind of close up while I talk. I was also getting really interested in this idea that it would take the brand, which was like this very designed and impersonal symbol, and imbue it with all of these different embroidery patterns that I was generating and coming up with. Each one of these panels took me about 30 to 40 hours, like something like this one, which represents a bank. This is a close-up of a lion. in orange satin stitch. This one probably took the longest and was about 50 hours. I have some detailed slides as well. So this, the process of making this work was interesting because I kind of did the first one and I liked the idea, but I wasn't sure I could commit to it. So it would sort of be these periods of time where I did one and then I waited, and then I did like 3 more for a show and then I waited, and then I kind of made it to the halfway point when finally someone's like, okay, like I'll show this. And that kind of helped me get over the hump, because it was just so much work and such a great commitment. This is a pyramid shape inside of a circle with rays emanating from the top of the pyramid, and it's the Fidelity logo. This one is the old Girl Scouts logo. Working on this series was also interesting because companies would go out of business, logos would change. Like, it was, again, very interesting how fast this design language would shift and how it could quickly become unrecognizable. And this is the crown for Hallmark. This next piece is called Valorization. And this is a graphing of the top 25 companies from top to bottom, through the years 1955 to about 2015, by profit. So by gross revenue, excuse me. So Fortune magazine does a ranking of the top, I believe it's the top 100 US companies. And I found this data and I wanted to create a visual graphic for this data. Again, we're looking at a piece that's about 4 feet tall and 10 feet wide. It's hung on the wall, and there are little squares that are 2 by 2 inches. They're graphic symbols and they're repeating, and they're very colorful and use a lot of primary colors. So what I wanted to do was to kind of abstract out these symbols to kind of take away some of that information. So instead, what we're seeing is like the motion of the stock market. So we're seeing things like you have like GE and Amoco and BP and US Steel. You have all these different companies that are sort of like, you know, kind of competing with one another. But you can kind of see as you look across the graph that how things kind of change. So there's a sense of motion, there's a sense of volatility. Around here, you sort of start to see Walmart coming in, which I represented with an orange dot on a white square. And this piece was interesting for me. Again, the process was interesting because I'd found all of this data and I had created a graphic and I really wanted to like visualize it in a more tactile form. I often think that I started incorporating craft into my work to sort of bring in some level of tactility to all of this stuff that felt very impersonal to me. And I was trying to find a way to like hold on to this information. So I had this started, but I still felt like this piece wasn't, it wasn't fulfilled. Like I felt like I was lacking something and I wasn't sure what it was. And I finally hit upon this graph that I had known for a really long time. And I decided, and it sort of covers the same period of time. So in this slide, we're looking at a dollar bill that has embroidery on it that's sitting in a plexiglass case that's in front of the other piece that I had just been talking about, which is blurry in the background. So what I did was I went back to this chart, which maps out the productivity and hourly compensation from roughly the same period of time. And I felt like this was like the other part of the information that the bright felt graph wasn't capturing, right? That was capturing the market. And this is capturing what is happening for workers. So the gold beads are representing the rise of productivity from 1950 to 2016, which is when this graph ends. And then I use this black, like rough linen thread to represent what was happening with the hourly compensation at the same time. So this is specifically for like non-managerial workers who are getting paid by the hour. So kind of tracking like minimum wage or tracking what the average hourly wage would be for someone. And if you can see like around this period, which is like in the early to mid 70s, productivity keeps on rising, and hourly compensation doesn't quite match that in the same way that it had from the period from the 50s to the 70s. So again, with this work, it was there's sometimes my ideas take a really long time to develop. So I felt like I worked on this piece for about 2 to 3 years, maybe even longer, from when I first came up with the idea of taking that data and transforming it. And then it was just like a way of kind of going through my thoughts until I felt like I had something that kind of really fulfilled what I wanted to accomplish. Um, this is another, this is a kid's Ralph Lauren polo shirt. It has stripes across, horizontal stripes. And on those horizontal stripes, I've added lettering. So I use this phrase from Jenny Holzer. It's actually a misquote, but at the time, Jenny Holzer, who is this amazing artist, visual artist, she just had a show at the Guggenheim. And she had a line, and she works a lot with text, and I love her text-based work. And she had a line of t-shirts at Uniqlo, and a friend of mine was wearing them, and I thought it was really funny. And so anyway, this is a quote of a misquote, or the original Jenny Holzer quote is, "Any surplus is immoral," and I misremembered it as "all surplus is immoral." And this shirt had kind of come to me through one of my sister-in-laws who wanted to pass it along to another one of my sister-in-laws, and they're not related by blood, they're not close. She was just like, "Oh, we have kids the same age, and I bought all this fun stuff for my kid and he's outgrown it. So like maybe your sister-in-law would like it." So I tried to like give it to my other sister-in-law, and she's like, "No, I don't like in India, you used clothes aren't seen as, they're just something you hand down. Whereas like here, I think we are sort of thinking about like, how can we reuse things? Like there's no like not shame is a bit of a strong word, but you don't really think twice about it. So I thought it was really interesting to sort of be in the intersection of this. And I had this phrase kicking around my head, so I brought them all together. Around that, so I showed a lot of that work at up in Buffalo in a show in like 2019. And around that time, I started feeling like I was kind of finished with that way of working. Like I felt like I wanted to kind of, instead of having an idea and like fulfilling an idea, I kind of wanted like work that gave me a little bit more direct fulfillment. So around 2019, I ended up getting a loom that I had given away back. I had just like a big Maycomber loom, and I gotten rid of it when I had to like downsize my apartment. And then I had gotten a studio, so I had a space for it. And the people who had it were like, she was like leaving her job, and she's like, "You can have the loom back if you want." So it was kind of perfect timing for me because I got a chance to get kind of just work in a way that felt so indulgent, much more rewarding. So I've been doing that for the last 6 years, and I find that I'm still working with the same themes, except now I'm actually just taking like, oops, sorry, I don't want to tilt that. I'm just taking actual artifacts, like things from my daily life. Like this is a basmati rice bag, which you can kind of make out the text here, which I cut up into strips and and just wove it into this tapestry. This is a painting that my husband had made, and I was really interested in how different, how weaving could kind of bring together images. Like I'm still kind of working a lot with that. So I asked if I could just take one of his studies, and he gave me this one. And that's kind of led to a collaboration between the two of us. And then also like I find so much stuff on the street, especially in the pandemic, people are just getting rid of so much, trying to make space, and no one really wants to throw anything away because we are like really thinking about circularity and reuse, and maybe someone else can make use of something. So I'd find a lot of stuff just on the stoop or like in a pile or on buy nothing groups. And I'm just always really interested in how much of it I can bring into a weaving or a tapestry and still kind of have it hold. This work is, so the last one was made on a Maycomber loom. This is the smaller size tapestry. This is about 2.5 feet by 3.5 feet. Has a lot of colorful yarn in like bright neon colors that has loops on it, so it's very textural. I've also added some faux fur and also more of that yellow rope that we saw in the last one. And there's some beads here that we can't quite see, but that you can see close up in the light. And the centerpiece of this is a flattened out Budweiser can that I found on the street. At the top, I have some plastic fronds, green fronds, and some vintage lace. So again, I'm trying to, and this is there's some blue here that's coming from like a Mylar balloon. I'm sort of interested in just kind of taking all these little tidbits of the things that I have around me and just kind of like almost thinking of weaving as like a garbage disposal, like as a way to like kind of trap all of these materials that I have around me. I get a lot of yarn from Material for the Arts, but also from like different buy nothing groups. And then I've also been like cutting up a lot of my clothes to use things, just kind of reuse stuff that like I can't wear anymore and I can't pass along. This is another work called Thrum Bones. So as you may know from weaving, there's always little tiny bits of things, little tiny bits of yarn, little bits of warp that there's like loom waste that's always part of weaving, especially if you're working on a floor loom or a table loom. So what I always just kind of collected this stuff and was wondering what to do with it. And then I had this pattern for bones laying around, these like cartoonish bones. So we're looking at a pile of 5 of these fabric bones made out of organza, which is transparent, into which I've stuffed some of the waste I have for my weavings. And because all of my weavings are using all this like random bits and pieces of consumers, culture, or like our culture, there's like little bits of sequin tape and like Mylar and I don't know, little bits of plastic. They end up looking really fun. And to me, again, it's sort of this idea of like surplus and value and like, what is it? What does our trash mean? Like, what if our trash was like rich and like was, I don't know, was like we valued it? Like, what would that look like? And there's something I really loved about like these bones and like thinking about marrow, thinking about like the connection to the body a little bit. This is one of my most recent pieces. I, like so many of us, keep getting pulled into random scams. Like, so I was trying to pay a meter and the meter, like there was just a parking, like, I was parked somewhere. I was trying to pay for the like 150 on a meter because that was the only way to pay unless I downloaded the app and I went to the website that they told me on the sign and Google just redirected me to the scam website. So again, Google's at fault here. It's not just me. But anyway, got scammed, called my credit. I kind of had a feeling, but I called my credit card company, let them know. And of course I get another card, but then I have this card sitting around and I had been thinking a lot about making my own rigid heddles so I could use them for like really thick yarn. But instead I decided to make a rigid heddle out of the Cricut loom. So what we're looking at here is a piece that has several components visually. It is a backstrap. It's basically, I tried to create a backstrap loom, which I've woven into. So what you have is a dowel at the bottom with some strings tied to it. And then you have a thick rope that I've woven in. And then I had this old banknote from before the euro. So I have a 50 franc note, which has like the little prints on it. And I always just kept it as a souvenir. So I decided to cut it up and weave it into this work. And then at the top of that, there's a little bit more rope. And then you can see the heddle because I left the credit card that I cut up to look like a rigid heddle at the top of the piece. I titled it Currency. Again, just thinking about like what is relevant. Like backstrap weaving is really old and is still like, for me, it's still like a functional currency. Like it still works. There's like, you can still use it. This technology makes sense. Whereas both the banknote and the credit card are now no longer valid. There's something interesting for me in that. Just gonna, I think I have just one more work I wanted to share with you. Oh, yes. And then this is just a really simple weaving. I made it with a plastic bag. Really, so it's a pink transparent plastic bag, and you can see another image on top that I've cut into strips and woven in. And the other image says gentle hands, and it was the packaging for yellow dishwashing gloves. And the piece is on a window, so you can also see light coming through, and you can read the words "thank you" that were written on the pink bag, and you can see outside and you can see the tree. So yeah, just another little piece of like just bringing different things together. And yeah, trying to see what I can do with like the intersection of like weaving and value and trash and materiality. I'll end there.
Thank you so much, Vandana. I love the credit card backstrap. You know, I like backstrap looms, so
That was
that
for
really
you.
hits me good. Uh, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And we'll be talking about it definitely in the discussion. But now we are going to turn it over to Jamie.
Hey everybody. Jamie Boyle, and I'm a white person with kind of a growing out bowl cut haircut with wearing reading glasses so that I can see the computer. And I'm sitting in a room that is very multi-purpose. There's some drywall to my left. There's a warping frame, couple embroidery hoops, kind of amazing. So I'm going to go through all these things, take this opportunity. There's a loom. There are some shopping bags. There's an exercise bike. You can't, there is a cat box. It's kind of hidden. You can't see it. There's a really cool skein winder that I got at an antique store that I've been working on making happy again. And that's about it. There's a mixer. I'm in the house that I grew up in, and it's all in transition. And so my studio space here is a multi-use and kind of a transitional room. So I'm going to share my screen. I've been trying to figure out this flow. I'm just gonna improv because there's a lot I want to say, and also I just kind of wish we could just talk about Vandana's work. So I'm like, okay, but here we go. What you're looking at here is kind of a collage of the geography of where I currently am beaming to you from. So there's a piece of blue paper that has clouds printed on it, but then I'm going to overlay some green shapes so that we have an image of two rivers converging into one river, which I'm really Vandana, I don't remember the name of the dollar bill piece, but I was like, whoa, there's like a shape miracle right here. But this is the Ohio River, Monongahela, and Allegheny rivers. I am currently, if we're looking at this image and considering cardinal directions, north is the top of the screen, south is the bottom of the screen, east is to the right, west to the left, and I'm kind of I'm underneath the Ohio, like just where the Ohio River has formed. So underneath this blue shape, kind of right about towards the bottom of this image in what we would call a southwestern. I'm going to just say southwest of the Ohio River right now. It's only more in recent years that this whole region is referred to as Pittsburgh. The land that I live on is like most likely was predominantly inhabited by Monongahela peoples and Osage peoples. But and those were those folks for sure understood cultivated this land and understood the kind of incredible verdant nature of a site where two rivers are converging into one, or potentially there's some thought that maybe it's one river that another is joining, but either way, super verdant area. And then European colonizers really took probably no surprise, but a very extractive view of this land. And also I feel like this is kind of, so we have industry coming into a lot of steel industry. So a lot of extractive, a lot of mining, a lot of extractive, like land is being extracted here. So these green shapes totally becoming brown, really, and like their terminology now, brown fields. So very unusable sites, or gray, if we, but also then Andrew Carnegie settled in front of his family, immigrated to the north of the Ohio River here. And I'm gonna get back to that because this is all like we're getting there. But the people who I come, like my near ancestors moved to so down along the Monongahela River was Andrew Carnegie's steel mills. And so we have, so here's the same. So now we're looking at a map from a book following that same kind of point, Ohio River. We're going to wind down the Monongahela River to Homestead. There are a lot of steel mills, a lot of labor activity happening there. My near ancestors worked in the mill, the steel mill in Homestead, and also ran a candy shop. So now I'm here, right? And there's this big gap of history that and connection to the land that I don't have. So growing up in this area, I really understood the geography really affected me, but it affected me in a sense of a commute. So like to get one place, you had to cross the river and then come back. So now I'm just starting to put pieces of fine yarn on this landscape. This is how it felt to me to get from point A to point B, which was actually a beautiful thing for me, though it was born out of a lot of extraction and destruction. But there was no, the beautiful notion of like cardinal directions, north and south, really evaporated, because to get north, you had to go south probably, and then west, and then east, and around a detour because of construction or what have you. Anyway, no straight lines. And so I'm just piling yarn on top of this beautiful verdant landscape. This is what my experience of growing up in Pittsburgh was a tangle. And so I can imagine that I became very ungrounded. So I'm removing the green earth from this image now, and it's just a pile of yarn. And this is really like the formation of a lot of my creative work, really. So there's a complicated relationship there. This relationship is only this experience of the land or this experience of my childhood only comes from a real like extraction of resources and a destruction of this beautiful land. I'm working like this is thing that I'm really thinking a lot about, this feeling of being unmoored, even though I'm in the the house that I lived in for 18 years of my youth now again. So I'm gonna clear the yarn away. We're just looking at clouds now. And I will say, full disclosure, right now I don't have a lot of new work to show because most of my work is teaching and growing a fibers program at Contemporary Craft in Pittsburgh. And it's really amazing. And it's truly like, I don't separate that as it's art. That's my art practice right now is there. But I will say that so I'm going a little more historical or autobiographical here. The most probably important person to me in terms of weaving was an artist named Ann Hamilton. I grabbed her book to see if I could get this on the screen. So I'm holding a book. It's got her name printed on it. It was red. It's a really big, thick book because she's made everything. Red cover, blue letters, Ann Hamilton. Ann Hamilton was my first weaving teacher, and I worked in her studio after grad school. And what I learned from her was this was after a lot of reflection, because I used to say that I learned to weave after I left her studio. And she was present for that at one point, and she said, no, you were weaving when you're in my studio. And all I can say is that what she taught me to see, and so now I'm going to write on a piece of paper. She taught me that every situation, oops, let me get it on there. Every situation is a potential, well, it's not even a potential, it is a loom, right? So every situation is a loom. Every situation has the potential to be a loom, right? So a loom is a tool that holds fibers in just the right amount of tension for what they are and what their identity is, like too much, and in order to create a communion of fibers. And that communion is temporary, right? Like cloth perishes. And so with her work too, like we were working in large scale installation primarily, but using a lot of language of weaving, and also this notion of creating cloth, or the idea of cloth, with opera singers and pigeons and radios and things, all kinds of disparate elements that could come together for a period of time, have a relationship, like really relate to each other, be integral for, that space between each object is so important, makes sense, and then everything can retain its original identity and return to itself. So I say that to say that the tradition that I come out of that I come up in weaving is poetry. Having her as my first teacher, and the problem that I'm really trying to weave out of is capitalism. So I feel like a lot of I took a weaving, learned how to use a floor loom, and everything clicked. I loved it so much, but a lot of those techniques are born out of production and efficiency, and really that also, it's just like, I'm gonna put the ball of yarn again. It's just like how I feel a complicated relationship to this circuitous, beautiful tangle that is the way that thoughts come to me, that I really relate to commuting through Pittsburgh. The same, like I love every aspect of the process of using a floor loom, threading yarn through the heddles, all of those things. I love learning new ways of using my hands in efficient or economy of movement kind of ways, but it's complicated. So I'm continuing to try to weave my way out of that. So I'm going to share a little, I have a props table that I was organizing, but then now all the props. Sorry, everyone. Oh, here it is. Okay. So I just made this for my weaving class. So I'm just putting a little zine here. So it's a 1-pager zine. So it's a 1-page. I'll unfold it actually, and I'll hold it up in my little screen, right? It's one piece of paper that one piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, photocopied on a black and white photocopier. And this is the type of thing that's happening all of the time for me, and why also to relate to, okay, I'm gonna do it. Sorry. Also to reference Anne and what she taught me. We were in my studio in grad school, and I thought, Anne, I don't make anything. And we were looking around my room, just like this studio room that I'm in right now is full of stuff I make. And we just labeled things so I'm writing the word finished on a piece of paper and unfinished. And we started just noting things in the studio, whether they're finished or unfinished, and we realized they were all the same thing. So I feel like she just taught me to, in this lesson of finished and unfinished, and just looking at stuff that I encounter or make or move around or arrange, that she was like, Jamie, your way of being is an artist. And I feel really grateful for having that lesson. So I kind of just approach every aspect of, as an opportunity. Like this right now, I'm trying a little puppet show. It's kind of working, kind of not right now, you know. But here's a little zine that I just made for my Weaving One students. I was so it's like two lines from the sort of syllabus that I offer that says, be curious about the opinions and desires of your own hands as you work on them. Back to the beginning of the pages, your way of weaving is beautiful and right. And then if I open up the whole page, which on the screen we'll have to, so that was all in just a regular old like serif font, and then photocopied as handwritten, make the thing happen. There we are, happen. Which was a lesson that I learned in a weaving class this summer that I was a student in. And I just think that's a really also beautiful aspect of weaving, is that kind of like Vandana's a credit card heddle, right? It's like you can make the thing happen. Like, you know, if we were in real space, Vandana and I could be a loom. We could hold yarn between us and be a loom, right? It just make the thing happen with what you've got. And so let's see. I'll just show a couple little works in progress that are text-based. So I really love weaving tiny. So this, I'm putting a small weaving, it's like a 4.5 by 4-inch wood frame with cotton string and some a kind of strange palette of colors, so a little bit of blue, peach, pink, and black, gray. And we can see in the letters are about the size of my fingertip, each letter. So what we can see right now is the word swooned, kind of going across the bottom, SWO, and then at the next O, like I'm running out of room, right? ONED. So this is a great example of like how I approach work, which is and how text comes, right? Or why it comes. I was ordering a sandwich for a friend through a bar, you know, on the phone, and the person who was talking to me called me hun like 3 times, and it just was making me like swoon. I was like so it was like it felt such an impactful moment that I was like, okay, I'm gonna just spend a lot of time with that feeling. So then I just start to weave it in, and like I like to court running out of space and messing up. So just seeing how it fit. And I also appreciate that with weaving tapestry, I weave from the bottom of the image to the top of the image. So I'm not starting in a linear way with the text. I'm kind of in the middle, hoping I can fit the last word in somehow first, and then go back in time. So hopefully this will fit. Hopefully I can fit on here 3 times I swooned. We'll see what ends up fitting. But right now we've got swooned, and we have the I in dark blue, and then times is fitting in here. The T and the I we have yet to finish. So this is to be clear, very unfinished, or an in progress, not an unfinished, an in progress work. And then I like to have a lot going on at once, because this is how this yarn ball, right? This yarn tangle is how my thoughts come through, right? So I like to have a lot going on at once. So I have this another in progress 4 by 4.5 piece of weaving. This one is a lot more monochromatic, mostly blue. We've got a little bit of white coming in and a little bit of gray. And this, I was just like, oh, I think I would love to make the word yes in a cloud form, right? And so I started it, and then I was like, I really wanted to say no. And so now, no is coming in at the same time that yes is coming in. I don't draw these before I start too. So I really court some like gentle disaster with these weavings, because I don't know what's gonna fit. So got yes going on, and now I'm like, I really love that, like just breaking the logic of how, or maybe it is this yarn tangle logic. Yeah, I've got yes going, now I want to overlay no, and so the no is what this little bit of gray that's coming in. So I've got a part of a Y, part of an E. We can only just trust that that's part of an N, right? This little gray bit. And then I'm interested in them overlapping and it kind of becoming hopefully a melded word of the two. So there's kind of I don't know, less important which word it is, yes or no. And I also like to just have a little sweet fun. So those are two little characters. All of these little, so this is another 4x4 weaving. These little weavings started as a way for me to make something quick. And now they've become a really like I'm really good at, like, I mean, I think that's a shared thing among fiber artists, textile folk, right? Or maybe all artists. I don't, like, just slow it down. What's the slowest way to like make the most minimal effect? Oh, I'm in. Tell me how. So this is two little characters. Again, 4x4 weaving, a little brown floor. I'm imagining, it looks like, I think that it's going to end up that they're standing in front of a window. I was hoping that it would look like they're at a museum looking at a work of art. There's two characters, they're right up against each other with their arms around each other. One has a little pink hat. I like to break my own heart a little bit and just have a little like fun too. So come back to this one when something else gets overwhelming. Let's see what else happening in here. This a little, because I'm in the house that I grew up in, and I'm looking now because I put a bunch of different props on my table, and I just noticed a picture of my mom. My mom was a calligrapher, and so I grew up with fragments of text just everywhere, and I didn't realize like how much that impacted me. And so this is my new like version of the quick art, which is also not that quick because I set all of these letters. So I'm showing you now a little 3x3 book. It's an accordion fold. I'm gonna put it up on my screen now, just accordion fold piece of paper. This is my new quick version, but again, I'm like typesetting these with little like rubber, it's like this really silly little like tweezers and rubber, like little rubber stamp kit that you can get at the regular like office supply store. But something hits me, so this was two experiences that I had on the same morning, and so I just made a little book. So I'll read this as I turn the pages. So it says less sad, and I open it, and the whole spread, it said no time for conversation, making pancakes from scratch. There's a little gold kind of wrapper glued there. She had to go to the studio too, while I know time, but for driving. Get work done, but drove the other way, across town to breathe. And then because it's accordion fold, we can start the book again. So it's now we're left with the new cover says when considered like that, colon, and a big open spread space. Those events are way less sad. It was kind of this like ongoing round and round kind of experience. This is my new like when I just need to do something, and I collect this stuff just piles up all around me. So it's really a special opportunity to do this. And then I'll just maybe we're getting close. So this is a booklet I made that was also this is another quick thing, but it made it as a little addition. It was a box version of an installation that I did at the airport. So what we're looking at is, I'll hold it up because it doesn't fit in my camera. A 4x4. That seems to be my size, like hand size, I guess. Didn't notice that. Just a white, plain, nothing special cardboard box. Looks like a miniature pizza box, actually. with that kind of that tactile old-timey label maker that presses the letters into the tape. So blue tape, as I miss you. We open it up, it has a version of the installation. So in cloud form, I miss you. And in this booklet, just a little, this is like 2.5 by 3 inch stapled book of scrap paper from the original, from the initial installation. So there's a mar of like a pinhole or something in this piece of paper on the cover. It says still in kind of calligraphic letters. Much. Oh, this little picture, which I'm just going to sidetrack us for a second, because this was, Donnelly, I was thinking about some of the questions that you sent to us in advance about text. And the day that I took this picture was this wild, so this is a like little tiny strip of a picture of a building on Carroll Street in Gowanus. And with, it's kind of gold sheen that looks like it, I didn't treat this image, I couldn't even capture the gold and the blue like we were, like the people who were outside were experiencing. It was some wild, it wasn't wildfire time, but it was like it was like a storm and sunlight at the same time kind of situation, but it created that golden color and it was beautiful. So many people were stopping on the corner and like sharing this moment together. And when I looked up, like kind of in the sky, if we imagine this little fragment of a building and like look up to the sky from this fragment, there was a cloud that looked like it said Marty. And the stuff like that. And Marty was someone who had recently died in my life. And so it was like this moment. And so it's like stuff like that where I feel like little miracles come through. Even that someone calling me hun 3 times and like somehow in that moment, it like making me like my heart overflow is that sort of thing, right? Which is common for all of us, like being a human in this world, right? So that kind of like wanting to stall that out or just be with it, right? And then continue to turn the page. Dang. 2 and sideways on the page in those calligraphic letters already, kind of fake balloon letters. When, and again, it's I miss you when, right? I miss you much. Dang, I miss you. I miss you too. I miss you already. I miss you when. I miss you always. Again, always in calligraphic letters. I miss you forever. And forever, I was playing with the like edition number 2. So this one is number 15 of forever. And just to kind of come back to that mom shout out. So my mom had, I found when I was going, she had passed away. She passed away a little over 10 years ago. And I was going through her stuff recently in the house. And I found this canister of stamps that she had cut into these letters. So just really love, she'd probably be horrified that I'm showing you all these because I don't think that she was very like conservative. Well, she wouldn't like that I said that either. She's a very precise calligrapher, and these letters a little bit janky. But she cut them out of erasers. I just feel like it's such a precious thing that you get to encounter those. And then there was this little weaving inside the container too. This little weaving is blue warp with a brown weft. It's only about 1.5 inches wide, and the woven part is about 2 inches. And this is from a project we could talk about another time. But little scraps I'm trying to incorporate still. So feel like scraps is my jam. And I think that's all I'll say. I feel like I really want to get back to talking about Vandana's work. I'm gonna stop sharing this screen so I can see your faces. And thank you for this opportunity to try this out.
Of course. I mean, I feel like I would just watch an art piece form in front of me, which is really, really cool. And I'm a little inspired to maybe try doing some textile Zoom work. Uh,
I really, yeah, cool. Yeah,
um,
thank you. I know it was a little disjointed, but thank you for this is like preview.
no, it came
You tried.
across. It was really
Okay.
cool.
Okay.
Uh, so, um, I'm going to add Vandana, and we're going to go into the Q&A. So what do you have anything you want to start off with, either of you?
I just want to say, Jamie, I really loved, I love seeing all your work, and I love the way that you can kind of, I think poetic is a really great way of putting it. I think that definitely comes across in your presentation, but also in your works and like the little threads that kind of bring them all together. Thank you
Thank
so much for
you.
sharing.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like it's always nice to be able to do this kind of thing too, to kind of see. Because I'm like, when I was preparing, I'm like, I don't, do these things come together? But I'm so inspired by your work and this. I really loved how you were talking about, well, many, many things, but I don't know. I'm gonna start with this because it like hit me so hard. Weaving as a garbage disposal, like I really, but there's something so cool about that because it is like I mean it's like garbage disposal, but it's like transformation into this thing that's like you're like it's um I love that. I love that as like a casual way of saying it. I mean, I feel like it's so much obviously. Well, I think it gets us it like it keeps us like resting on the because I say it's oh so much more than a garbage disposal, but really what is a garbage disposal, right? Like garbage is going away, right? And so you're kind of like keeping it. Yeah, I'm just really that. And also, well, I don't know if you intentionally said this, but after we were talking about craft and tactility, you said as a way to hold on to the information. I was just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this way, like I really am appreciative of that, like return to hands as like this like grasping of information, or really like that's like
Well,
yeah.
I I think it's especially with like economics, like there's so much that I feel like is barely within my grasp because I didn't
Hmm.
study it, but it's just like I get really excited and I find these like ideas or words and I'm like, but it feels like just the tip of the iceberg of what it's really all about. And I'm really trying
Yeah.
my hardest to just hold on, and I do
Yeah.
feel like for me, making art sometimes is a way of like doing that, of trying to like solidify that for myself, because these are like these bigger structures around us and they create so much of our world. And I feel like I see it, but I have such little like understanding, deep understanding of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, and they almost create like our bodily experience of this world in a lot of ways too. I mean, it really does like um affect our health. It affects our access to health. Like all of that goes through. So it is like really
Yeah. And just
mhm.
how we define what work is and what value is, what success looks like all of these things kind of like, I think I really loved how you were talking about weaving out of capitalism, because I think that's I'm feeling a parallel thing, and I wonder sometimes is if it's because I've sort of moved from where I used to work in textile design for a really long time, and then I started teaching with Intertwine Arts, and I wonder if like all of this is sort of like a seismic shift for me, but I
Yeah.
do feel like I'm making less things on the floor loom and it might be time for it to go again, because I'm just making smaller things. I don't want to buy a lot of material ever. Like it's
Mhm.
just like such a, like I have all these rules, and these rules are driving me to make a different type of work, which sometimes doesn't feel like art with a capital A. And I'm really like
Mhm.
struggling with that. Like, what does that mean?
Mhm.
To
Mhm.
kind of say no deliberately to this like bigger is better and scale and let's have assistance and like, yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear
Yeah.
more, yeah, just how you feel about like your art practice or how it situates itself within your
Yeah.
teaching practice?
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot though with my like weaving, like I love weaving like yardage, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so complicated because I find so much pleasure in it. But that's where I'm really interested in that, like letting it be like um desire driven,
Hmm.
right? Or so I don't know. I feel like really like I'm like that's it's really a new thing for me, this like inquiry of like trying to like, because I've noted like been trying to be really clear about what tradition I'm weaving, like what I'm coming from. You know, this I'm trying to be really careful about like and when I'm teaching too, that I'm, you know, limited in my knowledge of this craft, like knowledge of weaving in terms of like what I know, like in my head, I like the ratio is like I know a lot about weaving, but in terms of like the crafts that developed around this planet, like I know the tiniest speck, right? And if I'm like honest about the like the tools that I've learned to use and those kinds of things, those are all coming out of like cottage industry
Hmm.
weaving, which was brutal. And that's where, yeah, I'm like, so I like love, um, yeah, so I'm like, I'm also conflicted because I'm like, oh, my joy comes from like just like that full body motion, right? But I don't have to be doing it, right? So I don't like, to me, that feels like when I'm being really indulgent is to make yardage almost for no reason, you know, like, but it's used, but I'm using a lot of material. So I also now I'm trying to like think in terms of making usable objects. You know, there's no need for me to make a hand woven dish towel, but I will. And yeah, I don't know what that
But yeah, I
means.
think weaving is interesting in a lot of what we're talking about of like capturing things and waste. And I think something that I was thinking about as you were both talking was that like you're using all of these materials that you find and that, you know, otherwise would be thrown away. But at the same time, every single time you weave, there's always extra. There's always something you have to trim or so it just is always this consumptive, but also does create its own excess at the same time. So it kind of, there can be a circularity to it, but there's always going to be some amount of quote unquote waste in some way. And I think that's something to reckon with, waste and consumption.
Unless you turn them into bones, Vandana. Love those bones, dang
And,
it.
and lately, we make a lot of pillows at Intertwine Arts, and I use everything as stuffing. Like literally, I'll go through the treasure box and it just becomes stuffing, and it actually makes like a really nice stuffing compared to the polyfill. Or sometimes I'll do
Hmm.
like half half because it's very heavy. But
Yeah.
yeah,
This one
and
is
Yeah.
this one is full of scraps.
so again, I think it's like totally possible. But again, you have to think
Yeah.
about what the intention is, right?
Hmm.
And I think that I'm still kind of like trying to figure that out. Like, I just pulled off a piece from my floor loom, and I think it's four different pieces, but I don't know. And I have to figure it out. Like, what's it going to look like? And there's like this process, this time of like what I put into it as I was weaving it. And yeah, it just takes me longer and longer to finish a work, and I'm always like taking longer times to think about what it's gonna become. And like, I think I'm just gonna go to the park and like lay it out and see what it looks like,
Mm.
and then decide. But yeah, it's again, I think being in the city, there's just so many materials that I have access to. Like someone will literally give me like crochet cotton and be like, "Oh yeah, I bought this. I don't know what to do with it." And now I have to use it, right?
Right.
It keeps me weaving. Like, um,
There is a question in the chat for you, Jamie, um,
Oh.
which says, "Do you feel when you're weaving on your little looms, you're closer to what you want to express than when you work on a loom, which you, I think, compared to commercialism, hand weaving
Mm.
versus machine?" Question mark.
Um, I don't necessarily, honestly, the I feel best, like, like body feeling, like that's almost like it's some kind of I don't know what, definitely like maybe a little dopamine when I'm weaving on a floor loom, weaving yardage and just going into a rhythmic motion. I think of it a lot from, and I don't think of like weaving, goods for the home as being like I'm interested in that from a like there's no real, I think there is need for it in a way. Like I think there's a complicated space there. So I'm not at all saying that I don't think it's commercial. I don't think that it is exactly engaging in capitalism. Well, I mean, I'm engaging in capitalism constantly, right? Like that's but I mean weaving, I'm just thinking about the practices of it and how they're derived similarly, like how I'm here in Pittsburgh because of Andrew Carnegie, probably in some ways because of steel mills, right? So that complicated the history more so than the present practice. I think that it's really beautiful to make a hand woven dish towel and to use it and to enjoy it and to live with beautiful art that is constantly touched, because I think that um, I love making cloth that is touched, because I think that that's one of the superpowers of craft is that it's not just visual. It is like not just the idea of tactility. It is tactile. It is, you live with it. You like wipe your mouth with a hand woven piece of cloth. You pick up you pick up a ceramic cup and drink with it. It's very intimate, and this relationship is really like essential. I'm really interested in like that, the heart of that, and being in that as a maker. So then these, like, honestly, I feel probably more like pressure to make ideas, um, in a way, in an art way. But I love ideas too, so I'm not like, or make some, I don't know, like I feel a little bit more like I have to, I shouldn't say that. I'm not negative on either thing, but am I making any sense?
Yeah, there's
Um,
a different fulfillment that comes out of those, and different
yeah,
upsides and downsides.
yeah. There's like a different thrill in both, because though they're little, and I don't know what I'm doing as I'm going, right? So there's a thrill in like trying to like but draw like I'm an old like dot matrix printer from side to side, right? And like, um, I really love that. That's a super slow thrill. And then I think because I'm a dancer, like working on a floor loom just feels so freaking good. And I love teaching people how to use them, like so much. Yeah.
I was also a dancer. Maybe that I've never thought about connecting that to why I like weaving, but that's an interesting.
Mm. Hmm.
I love that you talk about the improvisational nature of your work. Because that's something that I love to explore. Like I feel like every time the shed opens, it's like a whole new moment. Anything can happen. And like
Hmm.
that like just drives me forward. It's kind of really frightening in a way because you don't know what's gonna happen and how it's gonna resolve. And every time, like especially well on a floor loom when you work like that, you can't see the whole piece. Like you just see
Right.
parts of it, like sequences. So it's always this like crazy um like getting to know something after it comes off because it's like I have no idea what it's gonna be.
Right.
But there's something
Yeah.
I think like most of the time people think of weaving and they think of it as methodical. And I think for like the way that you've been talking about it, it's nice. It's something totally different. It's like you're really introducing so much play and whimsy and yeah, I love that.
But I feel like probably if I'm like in these little babies, I don't know. I feel I'm with my weaving community at Contemporary Craft. Some of them have told me I'm a really boring, probably methodical weaver. Like I love to just keep going too.
I mean, I
So
definitely
just
have that. Like, there is something so nice about having a weave and just getting into it and putting on some music and
yeah, and like the
just
just like staying, I don't know, that for me is like a mindfulness practice, because it's not like I can't zone out if I can't think about it. I can't not think about it.
I don't know. I don't know. I think that for me, a lot of times with craft, it's sort of like my thoughts are free, but I'm not attached to them. And I think it's really interesting because I have a hard time meditating, for instance,
Hmm.
but I can do it through like a physical practice like yoga. And I think
Yeah,
I can do it a lot with craft practices. Like even when I'm weaving in ends, or like
yeah,
something like that, or knitting is really great for that. And weaving for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, we had someone in a class literally a few days ago who said something like, I did a mindfulness class the other day, and like yoga doesn't do it for me, and meditation doesn't.
Yeah.
But we were actually doing kumihimo, like weaving
Hmm.
braiding, and she was like, but this like does that for me. Like this feels like mindfulness,
That's
um,
awesome.
which was very cool. Um, I also wrote a bunch of quotes that you all wrote down, but they're all spread throughout my page. Gentle disaster uh,
So good.
was a wonderful. Um, uh, but we were kind of talking about this before, but the trapping. I really just love that, and also Vandana, you said something about like finishing a thought with some of your work, and I feel that very strongly when I create. And sometimes, like you were saying, you can finish a thought. It takes a while to finish a thought, like years.
Mhm.
I have that with I see it particularly with my poetry, where like some I'll write it and it's one and done, but others are just such big feelings or thoughts, or I haven't like figured out what my take on it is, I guess, that it takes years and I'll go back and edit it for years and years, and then maybe eventually I'll be like, now it's done because I've kind of finished that thought in my brain. And I think like you're saying with yarn, with weaving, it's a very literal capturing, and it creates that satisfaction of thought that's maybe unique to as an art form, though and so to some extent all art does that. We're all trying to capture but it just does it so literally in weaving.
And I think I'm really drawn to the materiality. Like again, going back to like, I was always creative as a child, but I wasn't a drawer or a painter. And I just like, but I liked like making friendship bracelets or like different types of things that I would do with my hands. And I think like now it kind of makes sense. Like I ended up going to school for photography and like, eventually did like this whole conceptual art practice where I was appropriating logos and slogans and all this other stuff. And like, so now to find myself in weaving, it kind of makes sense. I'm like, oh, like I've always been creative. It's just that when you show that in a craft way with like thread, it's just not taken as seriously. Not that art in our society is taken that seriously, but like painting and drawing seem like art and everything else is demoted to craft. So
Mhm.
if that's just kind of like an interesting intersection, it's just seeing like how many people would be considered artists if like that part was nurtured just as much. And I'll see that a lot with some of our students, like Taylo in particular. It's like, it's great that she's in our art program, but when we first started working together, it's, she likes to draw, but she's always drawing from a picture and they're always kind of stay in the same place. But she started weaving and it was like leaps and bounds. And it was so interesting because I could see that in her. Like, here's someone who's really understand, like I think Glenn Adamson uses the term material intelligence, but she really has this deep understanding of thread and yarn, and like you can see that development. Whereas like, her visualization with like a pencil is sort of like mine. I'm like, oh, you want a face? Like, here you go. There's two eyes and like maybe some lips. So it's also, I think, with interesting to see crafts happening more and more in this current moment and just sort of seeing what that looks like. Because it's yeah, people who maybe haven't had access to that world or weren't taken as seriously, sort of having that.
Yeah, I also think like with cloth, whether we have names for things or not, everybody has so much knowledge and wisdom. Like to know that you like a particular Like you don't have to know, you don't have to name the fibers, right? To know like I like this shirt. I like how this feels. Like I'm touching a rack of clothes and I like how this one feels. Like that's real wisdom, that's real knowledge. And that's like that kind of like I'm not sure how Glenn Adamson is using material intelligence and that, but that feels like material intelligence to me. It's like, and it's that sort of thing where I'm like, I also feel like all of I pretty much think there are a few global regions where maybe near ancestors were not weavers, right? There wasn't weaving, but for the
Yeah.
like a lot of people like that's embodied and that's in us, right? And it's not that far away, right? So it's like unlocking this embodied memory that's like more cellular too. I think is really beautiful, but just that like knowledge, like you don't have to know like, oh, I don't like polyester in my shirt or I don't like the feeling of wool, right? Like, but that's a knowledge, that's an understanding of the fiber, like in a really like that we start learning as infants.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I love the idea of tactility with artwork too. I think there's such a kind of this hard line about like, well, if it's, you don't touch art, and I kind of go back and forth with it a lot sometimes in my own work. Like I think I like it when people touch with respect, but when that's not present, sometimes I'm really not
Yeah, no,
thrilled.
it's really hard. I know it's like, well, I mean, it's almost like maybe like touch with, like just like we would touch, or like hopefully or ideally touch with consent is, um, like
Yeah.
that's not always the case either, right? So similar though, like that kind of, but I feel like, but there's an urge to touch textile work, right? And I think that that's, I just really, I think that that's a exciting space, right? That's where I think like, and I of course I work in an organization where we're like it's a craft organization, and I'm off like that. This art craft divide is like patriarchal and super problematic, but also like craft has some superpowers that I don't know if I want to like. I don't know if I want craft to give up its own designation and be art, right? Like I like that it's um
Exactly. I think there are ways to like have respect for it and honor it and its traditions while
mhm.
also keeping some of that like available. Like I feel like
Yeah,
there's almost like a democracy in craft, which I really have
totally.
been enjoying, which I don't always see in art. There's like this established hierarchy in art, which is, as you said, get very problematic. So
Yeah, I like that availability. Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Exciting, everyone.
yeah.
All right. So I hate to draw it to a close because this is
Yeah.
wonderful conversation. To respect the wonderful time and attention that Jamie and Vandana have given us, I am going to flash their information on the screen so that if you are interested in talking to them further, you can reach out. And of course, you'll get a recording of this so you can get this information later as well. But I want to thank you all for spending your time with us tonight, to our two wonderful speakers. Uh, and that is the end of our Medley Talks. So thank you for a wonderful, creative, inspiring season. Um, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evenings.